Hello, Jamie.
Hi, Carol.
How are you today?
It's crazy days around the world.
I was going to say, we've had quite the weather.
Yes.
Not that it's been bad weather. It's just that it just keeps snowing.
It looks like winter.
Yep, it looks like winter out there. Feels like winter, although it's been in the 20s, so it's really not too bad.
No, we're not below zero.
But I was thinking that maybe we should talk a little bit about chickens.
Yes.
I'm seeing a lot of things about chickens lately, and here in Minnesota you do have to think about chickens in the winter. So I thought maybe we should talk about chickens, because I've been dealing with chickens this past week getting ready for winter, but I thought maybe we should talk a little bit about chickens. What do you know about chickens besides they lay eggs? And they taste good.
And they taste good. I grew up with chickens. I come from a big family, there's 6 kids, mom and dad. So there's 8 people in our house, and we raised chickens to butcher. And, every spring we got 100 chickens we butchered. And then we, of course, for eggs when you have that many people and stuff. Beyond that, I have not picked a chicken egg or helped butcher chickens in 40 years.
Wow.
Almost 50 years.
Wow. Okay. So I come from the opposite. We grew up in town.
Yeah.
And we got our eggs from grandma, because grandma, back then, back in the 60s and 70s, grandma raised egg layers, and they sold the eggs, loaded the trunk up with their eggs from their chickens and hauled them off they drove down to Redwood. And there was a big egg place there,
that
whatever.
Bought the eggs
and they bought those eggs
and resell them.
Yep, and then resold them, repackaged them, and all that kind of stuff. And I grew up knowing that, and I remember in the spring, grandma would, her porch would be full of baby chicks, because she replenished her stock of chickens. So that's what I remember. I remember picking eggs with grandma, and grandma's like, "Oh, don't put your hand in that one, because that chicken is pecks, and whatever." And grandma always had little scars all over her hands, from doing this. I mean, she did eggs for years. Yeah. So that's where I come from. When we bought chicken at the store, when we went out to grandma's, grandma always had chicken in the freezer. She never bought chicken because she had a flock of probably 100 to 200 layers.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, she had a huge laying flock. But my mom always bought chicken. We got the eggs from grandma because grandma could not sell brown eggs. They had to be white eggs. And so she had some banties and some other chickens in there that laid colored eggs. And so we would get those, and then whatever else we wanted, for additional eggs. But mom never bought eggs at the store.
Yeah. Whereas I have, since moving away from home as a young adult, I have bought eggs and chicken from the store, still do occasionally. And living here where we live now, I have bought eggs from farmers, and I bought eggs from you. But that is my extent. And then in our town, we are not allowed to have livestock in town, so we can't have chickens in town.
Some towns do allow that. Yep. They do, as long as you don't have a rooster. Yeah, that's usually the thing.
In the metro, there's towns that'll let you have chickens.
There is.
And I think it's really funny that our little town,
rural America here,
won't let you have chickens.
Yeah, that is interesting. That you'd think out here where you have a smaller population or whatever, but most of the towns around here don't allow you to have any kind of livestock like that, like chickens and that type of thing. But I thought maybe we should just talk a little bit about chickens. Now, I started with chickens in 2004 or 5, maybe, not knowing a whole lot about chickens.
That would be me now.
Yeah, I would never really raise chickens before, but my daughter had a friend whose dad needed to get rid of some chickens. And so I'm like, sure, we'll take some chickens. We were living in town at the time. We're like, we got a big old building. We're not supposed to have chickens while we were in town, but we're like, we got a big old building, and we'll just put them in there. Somebody else came along, dropped off. So he brought over, he brought the chickens in coolers, literally like an igloo cooler. Yeah, he had them stuffed in there, and I don't even remember how many he brought. And they were younger chickens, and I don't know, there was probably maybe 5 or 6 of them or whatever. Released them in the building that we had, and sure enough, I had eggs coming. I remember that first egg that we found, and then one of them started crowing, and so we're like, okay, can't have that because people are going to hear that. living in town, because we're not supposed to have chickens in town. I'm like, okay, well, I guess I get to learn how to butcher a chicken. I went on the internet, printed off how to butcher a chicken. All the pages, I must have had 10 pages, pictures, everything, laid them out on a table, put them in plastic sleeves. So if they got wet or laid them all out in order.
I can see this.
It took me forever to butcher that chicken, that rooster. It was a rooster, and he was a young rooster, so there wasn't a whole lot on him or whatever. No. But we dry plucked him, if I remember correctly, and Rich actually killed him. So that was that.
See, I could have helped you with that. I remember doing that part. I was involved in that part.
So yeah, that's and it probably took me 4 hours to butcher this stupid chicken, but we did it in our basement, whatever. But it was a learning experience anyway.
Yeah.
So that was my introduction to chickens. Shortly thereafter, Rich's dad passed away, leaving the farm. We decided that maybe we should put some chickens out there. There was really nothing out on the farm. He had kind of, I don't want to say he had abandoned it, but he hadn't, he wasn't residing here. So there was things disappearing off the farm and stuff like that. And so we thought, well, we get some activity going up there, we bring some chickens in and, that type of thing. And I was like, okay, so I guess we'll start with chickens. I'll start with chicks. That's where I was going to start with. I learned that you can actually order chicks. You don't have to raise them yourself, but you can order them from a hatchery, and they come in the mail. They come in the United States Postal Service.
Yeah, I always thought that was weird.
Yep. You can actually order them, and they, there's a minimum. Usually it's 25 chicks is your minimum, especially in the winter, because most people, that's when you're looking for you want your chickens to be laying by spring or by summer.
Okay.
And it takes 5 months for a chicken to go from a chick to grow to a chicken to start laying eggs.
Okay.
If you want eggs in May, you need to have your chickens in December or January so that you have them laying by then. I don't even remember. I know it was winter when we ordered them. I don't remember exactly what month it was, but I remember, got a call from the post office, and you could hear cheep, 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 cheep. You can hear them cheeping in the background, so we tootle off to the post office, pick it up at the back door, with this box of chicks. We had ordered them from McMurray Hatchery, I believe. There they were, and we were raising chickens in our basement. Once again, still living in town, not supposed to have chickens in
25
town.
of them now.
Yeah, and there was at least 25, and I think we had ordered just a few extras just to make sure we had 25 chickens. And I had ordered a dual purpose breed, because we were like, we weren't sure if we're going to keep them over winter or not, if we're going to butcher them. So I had ordered Barred Rocks and, I don't remember what they're, Delawares, Turkins, I think. I don't remember. It was kind of a mixed dual purpose thing. We just kind of ordered, and they were
as a newbie, you just let's wing it.
Yep. Just wing it. We'll see what happens. And I kind of, I did my research to make sure that they would butcher out at a fairly decent thing. You don't want to, Leghorns are a laying hen. That's what most of your eggs that are in the grocery store come from Leghorns, because they lay a big egg, a white egg. They do well in
confinement.
In confinement, that time they do better than your fat chickens, and they take less feed because they're very thin bird. They don't do real well up here in the winter in Minnesota. If you raise them on your homestead, where you don't have heated barns and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, they suffer a lot because they just don't have the bulk to
and then your
survive.
Production would go down anyway.
Yes, those are the preferred chickens that most of the egg producers have. It's usually Leghorns.
So even like big commercial places?
Mm-hmm. Okay. It's a Leghorn's a white bird. She's pure white, has big red comb on them. So I had done that research. We had this mixed. I don't know if they were exactly heritage breed or not, but we also had 2 turkeys that had been dropped off by a friend of mine who had found them in the ditch, because we have Janioas out here. How they used to do it when they were loading birds, they lost birds, and you'd find turkeys standing in the ditch because how they loaded them and stuff, and sometimes the turkey would end up on top of the truck, and they've mainstreamed that all, and you don't really see that anymore. But there for a while you did, and she had picked up these 2 turkeys, and she's like, you want these 2 turkeys? And so we had 2 turkeys as well out here, 2 big white, broad-breasted turkeys out here. And so we raised those in the house, and once they were big enough, we brought them out to the farm here, and Yep, we got eggs and all that kind of stuff. And then in the fall, we did decide to butcher them because we weren't going to run out here every day trying to.
No, if you're still living in town and not out here to take care of them.
Yep, trying to tend them. And so we butchered all of them. And it was, if I remember right, we did it. It was quite cold already. We were butchering them like in late October, early November. And it was a cold year, if I remember right. Anyway, so then we kind of just got rid of all our chickens. By the time we started over again, we were moving out here. So it wasn't a big deal. That's how I got started in with chickens. And I've had chickens out here off and on all the while we've lived out here. Sometimes I have chickens that I really tend to. And once Madison entered 4-H, then she showed poultry. And so then we usually had fresh chickens we had fresh chicks every spring because that's the only time you can show them is that first year. After that, you don't show chickens. You don't show a bird that's 2 years old. That has to be a bird that was born that same year. Okay. And so, her favorite breed to show is a barred rock, and it's just a black and white speckled bird, and that's her absolute favorite to show. Which is interesting because when you show them, you have to have them. Their patterns need to be matching. And that is not exactly easy to do. And she did very, very well, considering we only probably ordered 10 chickens and she had 2 birds that match out of 10 chickens, which is not a lot.
Had to show a pair?
Yeah, you had to show a pair.
Oh,
and they're brown. Of course, barred rocks lay brown eggs. And so they're considered, because you can show white egg layers and brown egg layers.
And the category is for the 4-H.
Yes. Yep. So we raised a lot of barred rocks out here. I currently do not have any barred rocks out here. Madison stopped showing poultry when she graduated out of 4-H, which would have been about 5 years ago. So there for a while. Then when she graduated, I had some chickens out here, but they were just a mishmash of chickens. So
until this year, I didn't really know. I knew you had a few chickens, but I don't think you had enough to collect eggs or anything. No,
I have chickens out here. They live in the calf barn.
Yeah.
And they're just miscellaneous birds that just kind of come and go. I've collected, people are like, will you take my 2 chickens or whatever? And like, that's fine. We'll just throw them in the barn. I do not feed those chickens. Those chickens are down there for bug control. They fend for themselves. You catch them eating cat food. They'll eat the food from the pigs. Grain that that
falls on the ground.
Yeah, anything that falls on the ground, they help themselves to. We have calf starter for our calves, and they will eat that stuff. But that's what they do. Goat feed, whatever. So I don't tend those chickens. And if I find eggs, I collect them. Yep. If I don't find eggs, pretty soon I find a mama hen and her babies running around. That type of thing. So it really wasn't a thing, and I bought my eggs from the neighbor.
Oh, okay.
Yep. So I got my eggs from the neighbor until this past year. Then I decided that I wanted to have chickens again. So I actually bought hens versus raising chicks because raising chicks is, the chicks are really cute and all that kind of stuff. But
it's work.
It's work. And so, in exchange for that, I paid for my hens. And instead of paying $3-4 a bird, I paid, I think, $18 or $19 for a bird that was about 2 weeks out from laying.
Oh. Okay.
So, because
a lot of that 5 months you gained.
Yes, but I had to pay for that.
Yeah, you had to pay for that time.
Yeah, whether or not that is something that you prefer to do one way or the other. If I did it again, I'd probably buy hens. If I could get my hands on young hens again, since I don't need to worry about Madison showing them or anything like that. And these happen to be a hybrid. They're a Rhode Island Red cross of some kind. I don't remember Red Star. They're hybrid.
How many hens do you have out there?
We have 19 hens.
Okay.
And this summer I was getting 18 eggs a day from them.
Oh my goodness.
They really lay. They are brown egg layers. They are still laying. I got 11 eggs today, and I got 11 eggs yesterday from them, and they should be slowing down more than that by now.
I was surprised that you're still getting that many.
Yeah, I am too. But I've had, the last time I had a flock of laying birds, they laid all winter for me. And I don't know why.
They love you, Carol.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I don't remember because I had about 25 then. Okay. They laid all winter. They slowed down some, but past years when I've had egg layers, I'm lucky if I get an egg a day. But that particular year, they actually laid, and there was a few other people I talked to, and they're like, yeah, my chickens are still laying too, and I'm not really doing anything real special to make them lay like that. I'm not doing anything different than I've done in the past, and for some reason, I don't know if the temperatures were just warmer or what, because really for chickens to lay eggs, they need a certain amount of daylight or light.
Yeah.
And
heat
so
or not?
They do not need heat. If you give them heat, have an insulated barn or whatever, they are fine with that. It's not going to hurt them at all. I don't. My building is insulated. I do supplement light in the winter for them.
Okay.
So I just did this past week. So I actually did it yesterday. I got the coop all hooked up because there is electricity there. And so I plugged in I have a heated water for them, hooked up a light. And so my light comes on at about 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning. It shuts off at 7. My chickens get, for today, they got about 12 to 13 hours of daylight. They say they need at least 12 to 14 hours. And so to get them to lay, honestly, my lighting isn't affecting them yet because this morning was the first time they would have gotten that.
Yeah, they haven't. So you're still getting eggs just because.
Because, and I don't know if it's because of the hybrid part. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But that just really surprised me because I expected to, we were thinking more like, 4 or 5, but.
Well, I know, because I needed eggs, and I'm like, do you have eggs? Thinking maybe they had really slowed down. But you go, nope, I got eggs. Okay.
Yep, I've still got eggs. I don't, January, maybe not so much.
Yeah.
But I did put supplemental lighting on them. That's just part of chicken keeping. I mean, and that's a personal choice on people if you want to supplement or not. If you want to, some people believe that your chickens need to rest in the winter, you shouldn't force them to lay. And by forcing them to lay by supplementing the light is going to shorten their lifespan.
Okay.
I don't know, but my thing is I want eggs. I'm still feeding my chickens. I'm still feeding my chickens, and nothing's
and it's not like you're going to butcher them in the spring and be able to eat them.
Right. And every animal out here serves some kind of a purpose.
Yep.
And I'm still feeding you, and so if I'm not getting eggs from you, I'm going to have to go to the store to buy them. And guess what? Those chickens are being forced to lay.
Yep.
All winter long. They're doing the exact same thing I'm doing. I'm just doing it on a small scale. And most of my chickens probably don't die from old age. My chickens get picked off by predators.
Yeah.
Or whatever. They get themselves into some stupid predicament and they end up, chickens are not very smart, but
yep.
Whatever, so that's not a real concern about me to keep a chicken, here for 10 years because after a certain amount of years, they're not going to lay very well for you anyway.
No, that's when they become a stewing chicken.
Yeah, they become a stew bird. That's my take on that.
Because even, in warmer climates where, granted their days would be shorter, but still, like in southern Minnesota or southern the United States, I'm sure the chickens are laying down there or they're supplementing with lights and stuff.
Yeah. Because that's my understanding anyway, that chickens need a certain amount of light in order to lay like they do in the summertime or whatever. And so I do choose to supplement, and I've set up a timer. So I did do some reading on that, and somebody was saying that I used to do it where I'd have the light come on in the morning and then extend it after dusk as well.
Yeah.
But I was reading, someone said that isn't always a good idea to extend it past dusk in the night because the chicken, if it's busy eating its feed or drinking or whatever, and suddenly the lights go off and it's pitch black, your chicken now doesn't have a chance to go roost. Oh. And she's stuck there wherever she was because it's suddenly dark and she can't find her way to the roost or nest box or whatever she usually sleeps in or whatever. And I was like, oh, that's a really good point.
Yeah.
That's a really good point. And so I'm like, nope, I'm going to just have the light come on I think it comes on at actually 4:30 and shuts off at 7. And
in the morning.
Yeah, in the morning.
Okay.
And so I'm like, nope, when it gets dark at night, I'm just going to leave that, and I thought, I was like, boy, that's a really good point. So
that's almost like, blending the two methods, meshing them together, using the good of both of them. Because you're still letting the birds natural part of their day be natural, and letting the daylight.
Yep, because my chickens have outside access all winter long. And, maybe in a snowstorm, I might close the coop so that they can stay inside and I don't have a chicken standing outside in the snow buried under a foot of snow. Yeah. Or, it snows too hard and the coop entrance is blocked and they can't even get in. That's when I'll close up my coop, but I like to have it open
Well,
you know,
it's good
so
for them to get out and run.
Yep.
That would be my opinion. It's good for them to get out and run.
Yeah, but I tell you, I don't know, was it yesterday morning, the day before, or whatever, I went out there and I just had thrown them some scraps from the kitchen, and I just usually throw that in the yard for them. And they're all like sticking their heads out the window, out the door, and they're like, well, I don't know if we want to walk in this white stuff. You know, they've never seen the snow. I was like, haven't you guys been out of the coop for a couple of days? Because it's been kind of snowing off and on, you know, or whatever. But yeah, they were like, oh, I don't know about this, you know, or they eventually did come out. But it was just kind of funny to watch them kind of like, okay, well, this isn't what it looked like yesterday or whatever, you know, type thing. But that's the one thing I do in the wintertime for my chickens. I do supplement light, and I do put heated water in there. And now on the Small Farm Sustainability and Homestead Living group, I did see some people talking about what they do. Somebody asked how you do water for your chickens in the winter.
Oh, okay.
That was a question that had come up in there. And there were some people that are just like, well, we just water them twice a day, throw the ice chunk out, put the water, you know, put the bowl back down, whatever. And some use the heated pail like I do.
Yeah.
Others they use a heated pan, and then you put the water, your chicken water, on top of that heated pan.
So
some people use a crock pot. They put a crock pot that they find at Goodwill and set it on low, and they say that works really well too. Now, I'm not sure I would want to have a crock pot sitting in my chicken coop.
Yeah.
Somebody's like, oh, I've been doing that for years. And I'm like, oh, okay. Well, I'm glad it works for you.
Maybe see if it was in the yard, but in the coop?
I don't know if I'd want that. I mean, I can see where it works.
Yeah, I can see the principle and stuff. You know, and then the thing is, though, is it the electricity that you have something plugged in? Because it's like you have a light plugged in. So what's the difference between the light and the crock pot? Because you're not putting that on a timer, though.
No.
You're leaving it plugged in.
Yeah, you'd have to leave it plugged in. Otherwise, it's going to, at least in our climate, it'll freeze. I guess maybe I'm just a crock pot hoarder. I don't.
I think you still have the crock pot you got for a wedding gift, right?
Yes, I do. So I'm not sure I want to, you know, put them out, you know, put a crock pot out there. I was like, oh, I think my pail system is much better. You know, I have a pail. It's got a cover on it, and then it's got nipples on it for the chickens to peck at. And I just fill the top of it, and I put the lid back on. The water stays clean all the time.
So how is the pail is plugged in, or you have
the pail is plugged in. It has a heating coil in the bottom. Nope, it has a coil in the bottom of it. It's a heated chicken watering pail is what it is.
Oh, okay.
Yep, and so it's got nipples in it, and so they just peck at this red thing that's got a little tiny dot in it, and it just releases water for them. And oh gosh. I had that when Madison raised her last batch of chickens for 4-H. So it's been out there for 5 years, and it's still working.
Okay.
I was like, that's good enough for me.
Well, yeah.
So
if it's working,
it's
not
working.
mess with the system.
So that's what I do for water in the wintertime for my chickens. Let's see, what else can we talk about? Oh, another thing to consider when you're getting chickens and you live in a cold climate like we do is that you might not want to get a chicken or a breed of chicken that has a big comb or big wattles. Wattles are what comes off underneath the beak or underneath their cheeks, whatever, you know. Yeah. And then their combs, which is on the top of their head, because those things get frostbite up here. And so I prefer chickens that have a rose comb or no comb at all.
Okay, I did not know you could get one without a comb.
Or they have a really short. Really short. So good suggested breeds like that are, let's see, I do believe the Barred Rock has a rose comb. Leghorns have the really big floppy comb, and they do not do well up here. We've had Leghorns up here because Madison worked at the state fair and they hatch out chicks. And she worked in the barnyard. And when her shift was done, they get rid of all those chicks and ducks and turkeys that were born there during their stint, because it's split into two. You only work 6 days. And then there's another shift that comes in and works another 6 days. And she brought home Leghorns, and she had brought home ducks. And the Leghorns, that's the first thing that frostbite on them is their comb. So if you want to prevent that, as far as if you have chickens, you like the chickens that have that big comb or whatever, is you need to put Vaseline on their combs and wattles. And that will protect them from frostbite.
I can just see that happening.
I don't do that.
No.
And so I try to stick with chickens that
breeds that work for the
that
situation.
work, that have a smaller comb or have a rose comb, that type of thing. My chickens out here do have a bit of a comb, but not very much. And I mean, chickens do freeze their toes. They'll be missing toes sometimes. Living up here, it's hard when you're poultry. It's hard. Poultry.
Well, I think it's hard for a lot of animals and people.
That there's a few things that you can do. I do know some people who say that you can take cayenne pepper or crushed red pepper flakes and add that to their feed, and that's supposed to help keep them warm because of the heat.
The heat of the spices.
Never done that, so I honestly can't speak for that, but that is something that people say they do, and it lets it allows their chickens to lay more in the wintertime. I don't know. I've never tested that theory. I'm sure they'd eat it.
Oh, they eat almost anything, don't they?
Yeah, they really do. They even eat things that aren't food. So, I don't know.
So, speaking of foods, what do you feed your chickens compared summer, winter?
I really don't change mine at all.
Okay.
I have my chickens eat crumbles or they eat scratch grains. That's what I feed. Or feed an organic feed out here. Scraps. And they get that stuff year round. I don't really change anything for them. And I'm trying to think if there would be any reason to do that. They do, you can feed them oyster shells, grit, and those type of things. But I don't use a lot of grit out here just because my chickens have outside access. Okay. And they've always got dirt.
How about the winter time? Do they have a lot of dirt?
No, probably not. But I've never done grit on a real regular basis for them. I guess I've never really had a problem with it.
Okay. Because if I remember right, it's been many years, of course, since I raised chickens with my family. Grit is to help them to digest their food, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah,
so it gets into their gizzard, and that's where, they don't really have a stomach.
That's gizzard, where they process it, their body processes it.
That's that.
Into the elements, gizzard, whatever the body needs.
The gizzard needs that grit in order to grind up the feed and utilize the whatever they're eating, the nutrition that they need. Or
my
whatever.
Dad taught me this many years ago, but
and the oyster shells are to help with the shell.
Egg production.
To help with the getting a strong shell, so you don't have a weak shells on your eggs. Let's see, what else can we talk about chickens? I know. There's a question I get quite often is, do I need a rooster in order for my chickens to lay?
Oh.
Yep, I was just asked that probably in the last 2 months. So how many roosters do you have to get your chickens to lay? And I'm like, well, actually in my organic flock, I don't have a single rooster in there because you don't need one.
Not for eggs.
Not for eggs. Not for eggs. Now, if you want chicks, then you need a rooster. But no, you do not need a rooster in order to get your chickens to lay eggs. They will automatically lay eggs.
Yep.
That is
just, it's what they're made for.
That's what they're made for.
So you do have roosters in your calf barn.
Yes, I do.
Because I've heard them.
Yep. My chickens do their thing down there. Honestly, that's all. They just do their thing. If they have babies, great. If they don't, great. If I find eggs, great. Doesn't matter. They're really there for bug control.
Oh, okay. So they're not there as a meat bird or anything?
Nope. And I've got like Banty mixed in there. So a lot of those birds are quite small.
Oh, okay.
And so most of them die either by predator or old age.
Yeah. You have a predator issue out here.
Yes, we do. We have coyotes out here. My organic laying flock is actually in an enclosed run.
Yeah.
They do not free range out here. And I did contemplate doing that this fall for a little bit, letting them out or whatever, but I just decided not to. I think their safety was just a little bit more important to me than letting them just run wherever they want to. I might change my mind next year. Yeah. Next spring when I don't know, but I have always had them in an enclosed run. So they can get outside. They just have a limited area. Yeah. And every once in a while, one flies out over the top of my fencing, and they're fairly tame. I just catch them, put them back in the coop. Yeah. It's not a big deal.
So you don't have a roof on your run?
No, there's no roof on the run. So it's open, but it's short enough. We did have a problem many years ago where we had hawks come in and our run was too long. Oh. And we had meat birds in that particular run, and the hawks would swoop down and pick them off. And so we've learned in the process of that we have to have a smaller square footage so they don't have the ability to be able to swoop down, fine-tuning it so that they aren't so easily picked off by other things. Because we have bald eagles out here and hawks and falcons and all
So
kinds
how
of
about
stuff.
like other predators, like raccoons or skunks or anything like that? Issues with chickens?
Yes. Raccoons. I don't know if raccoons are chicken killers, but they do steal eggs. Mink are terrible. Mink are really bad. And I know we have mink out here, but I've never had an issue with them, knock on wood.
Because you have a creek that runs through your land.
Yep. So we know there's mink out here, but we've never had a problem. And mink are terrible because they come in for the chicken and they kill the chicken and they take the blood, if I remember correctly, and they leave the carcass.
Oh, they don't even eat them.
No. So I know someone who had chickens not too far from us, a friend of mine. She kept losing chickens that way, and so her son went out and sat there and picked off the mink with a shotgun or rifle, whatever he used or whatever. He was like, mom's chickens can't be picked off all the time. And yeah, so I know they're around here, but we really haven't had a problem with them. I rarely see a raccoon out here, and I'm not sure why. We've had a pet raccoon that Madison had a friend who rescued a couple raccoons, and we ended up with one of those raccoons. And we have some possum. We do have a possum population out here. In fact, Madison just found one this past week living in her rabbit tree. We do have domestic rabbits out here, and she found a possum, and she's got this thing about possums. She loves possums for some reason. And so she was carrying around, here's our new kitty cat. We bring it in the house. No, we're not having a possum in the house. We've had possum in the house too, when she had found a dead mama and harvested the babies and raised them. So we've had a possum in the house.
She amazes me with her animals.
She's quite the girl. Those are the predators we have out here.
Okay.
And I really haven't had an issue with anything like that. And then of course we have coyotes.
Yeah.
So the coyotes don't usually come up where we're living
around the house.
But I mean, all of a sudden it's like, we used to raise turkeys out here, and Mama Turkey would come back in from pasture, and she went from having a dozen poults following her to 10. And you just know
slowly but surely down.
Surely then, And when we had ducks out here too, the ducks kept getting picked off. And so I finally threw the ducks in with the pigs, and our ducks lived in with the pigs just fine. Coyotes won't enter that pen, and the pigs didn't bother them. So that's where my ducks went. That amazes me.
These pigs will eat almost anything too.
Yep. Well, I've got a rooster right now living in our pig pen. He's been living in there for I don't know how many years, and he just eats along with the pigs when Rich feeds them and whatever. And every once in a while I find him over by my organic chicken coop, and I'm thinking, I don't understand how you cannot figure out how to fly in there with those girls. But no, he just walks around the outside perimeter looking at all the pretty girls, and then very soon he just wanders off, and I see him back in the pig pen. So I'm like, okay, well, I mean, if he goes in there, I don't care, but it's just like, but yeah, he's lived out there for I bet he's been out there for at least 3 years. And he never goes in the barn. He's always out in our pig pasture, pig pen, whatever you want to call it. So
pig run.
Yeah, the pig run or whatever. Yeah, he's always he sleeps on top of them, and when they're all piled up for the winter, and he's sitting on top of them.
So they warm.
So he stays just fine. He looks great. He's a beautiful rooster. But yeah, I don't know.
He's probably all the pop out all those chicks you get out there.
Could be. I have no idea. All the livestock we have out here. Chickens are probably one of the easiest livestock animals to start with. Rabbits are pretty easy too, but chickens are easy keepers. They really are. They don't need a lot.
No, they just need water and food every now and then. And then you got to clean the coop every now and then.
Yeah, you got to clean up after them, whatever. Like if you're raising them like I do with the ones that are in my calf barn.
That's almost hands off.
Yeah, I don't really do anything at all with them. But I'm also not expecting them to lay eggs for me.
Or you're not even expecting to butcher them. They're just pest control, which is nice on a farm.
Yes, but I think chickens are a nice gateway, so to speak, a gateway animal for getting your feet wet into animal husbandry. Where you kind of learn they're not real difficult to take care of. Don't need a lot of stuff. I know a lot of people who worry about worming their chickens and all this other stuff. And I don't. I am really hands off with my chickens. I don't really do a whole lot with my chickens. I feed them, I water them. I might monkey around with them and pet them and that type of thing or whatever. But I really don't do a whole lot with my chickens.
In some towns that allow you to have chickens, I think a lot of times they limit to the number. And a lot of times it's like 4. I mean, it doesn't take you I mean, you probably have to feed them once a week if you've got a feeding system going on, and make sure they have water every day. You know, the only drawback to having animals in Minnesota is January.
Yep. When you have to go out there and you have to take care of them. You know, when it's bitter cold, and it doesn't matter if it's storming or it's the sun is shining.
January is the time of the year that's like, oh, I like Minnesota, but January.
We just skip over January.
Yeah, there's about 3 weeks in January we can just like, not have.
So, I think chickens are a really nice place to start if you're considering livestock.
To dip your toe into livestock.
Yep, you don't need a whole lot of equipment.
Or space building wise.
Yep, they're really quite easy to take care of. I do use chickens like to dust themselves because chickens do get lice.
Yep.
And so I do use DE for that. I just put a bowl out there, whatever.
What is for those that don't know what DE is?
Let me see if I can pronounce it.
Oh, I could probably do it for you. Diatomaceous earth.
There you go. Yes, that powder. And we use it. We use that everywhere here. I use it.
Yep, I use it in my garden.
I use it. Yeah, I've used it in my garden to get rid of slugs. I use it on our cows for mites or for lice and we use it on the horses. And I mean, we use it all over the place, but I do use it for the chickens for dusting. I put a bowl out for them. If, most of the time they just dust in the dirt. They don't really care because they do have outside access. But in the winter.
Yeah, they don't have it now.
Yeah, then I put out a bowl of that for them. That is the one thing that I do diddle around, so to speak, with making sure they have that because I don't want my chickens to have lice and be miserable with that. That's not fun.
No.
And that's another reason why I prefer to have my coop open in the winter. Because lice like to live in that moist environment.
Moist and warm.
Yep. Closed up like that. They love that kind of thing. So that's another reason why I leave my coop open in the wintertime. So that
fresh air.
Yeah, fresh air and stuff. And so the chickens can get out of there and they're not just sitting in a coop for 4 months just pooping.
In the same place.
Yeah, in the same place all the time.
Because it's hard to clean too.
Yep. So that it just helps with bug control, so to speak, on the chickens.
So here's a question. So now that you have 16 chickens, you say or so?
I have 19.
19 chickens? So will you be adding to them this spring? Or
Probably not.
Okay.
Probably not.
Because you just got them this year.
Yes.
So how long will these chickens lay and produce for you before you would start considering replacing them?
I in an ideal world, or how they usually say, is that they produce really well for years 1 and 2. And then after that, they start to dwindle. Now, I don't know. This is a hybrid chicken.
Okay.
And so I honestly don't know, but they laid so heavy for me this first year that it wouldn't surprise me that they peter out a little bit here after 2 years. But I probably will not replace anybody unless something happens.
Okay. Until you see your numbers dropping really.
Right. I mean, I really don't need more than 18 eggs a day.
Oh yeah, you were.
Yeah.
It's like, do you need eggs?
I don't need that. We use a lot of eggs in our house, but I don't necessarily need 50 eggs a day type thing.
No.
So I probably wouldn't replace them until I saw a definite my numbers go down or whatever. And like I said before, I would probably look to buy hens and not raise them as.
So how hard
chicks.
is it to buy hens?
It is. It's hard to find them. Most people start with
the chicks.
Yep.
Get them in the mail.
Yep. You get them in the mail, and they are a little bit cheaper. Although I will tell you that they are not cheap anymore. I mean, you used to be able to buy baby chicks for a couple bucks or whatever, and now you're looking at $3-4 per chick. And that gets expensive when one dies for you.
Oh, yeah. I remember my dad, he had a formula. He wanted to butcher X amount of chickens. And so he ordered always more because you would always lose a handful. And the dynamics of, having to have a warm place for them and everything. Yeah, I remember that part of the process being kind of putsy for my dad. And my dad, he grew up on a farm, so he knew it. I would be clueless of how to go about raising chicks and how I'd have to outfit the barn. I'd be coming, it's like, Carol, help me do this. But then, I can't have them in town. So, except I know somebody, maybe we'll have to start talking to people about allowing, especially in the times that we're living in. Because that's one thing I wanted to talk about, the eggs, the price of those eggs. So I happened to be in our little grocery store in town today. I stopped to pick up some coleslaw mix for my lunch. And I just walked by the cooler and I looked down and commercial eggs were $6 a dozen. And I went, oh,
really?
Yeah. And I'm like, really? Is that real? And so I just did it as I walked by. I really didn't pause and look. And then he has farm fresh eggs too. And I didn't look at the price of those. But I was like, oh my goodness.
Yeah, I know the price has been kind of bouncing around. I mean, there for a couple times, and I don't get to town real often to go shopping, but I know a couple times I was in Walmart and there were no eggs at all.
Yeah.
You know, and let alone what the price of whatever it was, you know, or whatever.
I mean, I shop Aldi's, and there's been some times in the last 4 months or so, 5 months this summer, they had no eggs, or they were limiting you to 1 or 2 dozen.
Okay.
Oh my goodness, because eggs were I always looked at eggs as a fallback food. If all else fails, you could get some eggs. They were cheap.
Yeah, I was going to say they're cheap protein.
Yep. You could have, I mean, if money was tight, you'd always buy extra eggs and an extra loaf of bread, and you could have eggs and toast for any meal. And so that was, it kind of shocked me when I saw they were $6, and I went, whoa.
Yeah, and that's for a commercial egg.
Unless I was reading it wrong.
Yeah, because, you know, like around here, most of our farmers that sell eggs, the average is about $3 a dozen. And honestly, that person is really not making any money.
No, the cost of feed and everything.
Yep, feed is expensive, and the time you put into it and that type of thing that, you know, if you're looking for farm fresh eggs, you really... I would, if the prices in the store are true, like you say. Yeah.
And granted, our little town is always a little more higher than if we went to Wilmer. So,
but, you know, $3 a dozen's pretty cheap to get farm fresh eggs as far as I'm concerned. But, you know, some people maybe they just love their chickens, and it's just
it's a hobby.
Yeah, it's a hobby. It's still something to help out with the price of feed. I don't know. Mine sell for $5 to $6 a dozen.
Yep.
Yeah, because, you know, our organic feed's even more expensive. And I really probably am not making a whole lot of money on that either. But we consume a lot of those eggs, and I feed them organically for our family. That's the important part to me. But yeah, I don't know how these people, even if they're feeding them conventionally.
Well, and I can only see it getting higher because of what I've heard farmers are getting for corn this fall. And I'm like, really? Oh.
I don't think really raising chickens is exactly cheap.
No, I don't think so either.
But it is an easy livestock to have. And it doesn't take very long before you get something back. You know, it only takes 5 months if you buy your chicks, and 5 months later you're getting something, unlike you buy a calf.
You're a 2-year investment.
You're looking at 18 months if you're butchering it. Yeah. You know, at least 18 months, and you're looking at closer to 2 years if you've got an animal that you want to breed and you know, produce a baby, whether it's beef or for milk or whatever. You know, even a goat takes at least a year before you see anything back from a goat. Yeah. You know, chickens are easy. Yep, they're easy. And if you're looking for baby chicks, I mean, eggs incubate in 21 days. So, you know, you can have babies quite quickly. You know, it doesn't take very long.
Actually, I mean, if you were into that and had a process figured out, you could keep replenishing your flock all year.
You sure could. That's what you wanted to do. Okay, so the one thing we didn't discuss was that there's actually 3 different types of, well, there's probably 4 different types of birds. You have your meat birds. Yep. Your egg-laying birds. There's your dual-purpose birds, which we talked a little bit about those that are good for laying and for butchering. So if you got a mixed box of hens and roosters or whatever, you could put those roosters in the freezer on those type of breeds. And then there's also game hens. Those are usually a smaller bird, and there's not a whole lot of meat on them. They're very...
Oh, so are we talking like quail or... is it a New Guinea or...
I'm not sure where guineas fall. Guineas, yeah, but there's not a lot of meat on a guinea.
No.
They're pretty... But most game birds are extremely light, too.
Okay.
You know, so you don't get a lot of meat on those type of birds. I've never really had... We've had some guineas out here, and Madison raised quail for like 1 year until her cat got into there and ate her quail. So
little cat food going on.
I really don't have a lot of experience with the game birds, but there is
that category.
There is that category.
So if somebody's wanting to learn, they can look into that category too.
Yep. I think maybe at some point we should probably discuss raising meat birds, since you
Yep.
have a little bit of experience with that as well in the butchering process and that type of thing. But, Cornish cross are probably your most common meat bird.
Now that you say that, that sounds very familiar.
Yep, they've been around for a really long time.
Yep.
They're truly bred to
get big,
eat,
fast, aren't they?
And sleep. That's about all they do. Yeah, they grow fast, and you only keep them for about 8 weeks. They usually reach maturity.
Actually, you say that my daughter and son-in-law did that 2 summers ago.
Mm-hmm.
They bought the chickens, somebody else raised them for them,
Mm-hmm.
and then they split them.
Okay.
But it was
Mm-hmm.
they bought them in May and butchered them in July.
Mm-hmm. Yep. They don't usually hang around real long, and I mean if you grow them any bigger than that, they usually outgrow the capacity that their heart has to function correctly, and they usually die because they get so heavy they break their legs. And they can't fly because they're bred to be heavy.
Yeah.
And so, there's a lot of risk that goes with trying to extend them any farther. You might be able to get to 10 weeks or 14 weeks. I've had some that have lasted longer than that. It's really not worth it. It's really not. Yeah, your best bet is to butcher them in that 8 to 10 week period. We could probably discuss that more in detail as to why you'd want to raise them. And then what are your other options besides Cornish cross? Because there are other birds out there that people raise for meat that aren't necessarily an egg layer or dual purpose bird.
That's all I know about chickens.
Okay.
Or all the questions I have about chickens right now. Maybe we should have chickens in town.
Well, somebody on the city council, don't you?
I do know somebody on the city. Maybe a couple of them on the city council.
So I'll probably have chickens out here for a while, at least my egg layers.
For a few years anyway.
Yeah, I'm contemplating raising meat birds. I do have a lot of people who ask me for meat birds, but they are very labor intensive. It's a short, it's 8 weeks of very labor intensive because they do take a lot more time than raising laying hens. They're labor intensive because you really do have to know what you're doing when you're raising meat birds.
And you're limited on space. You couldn't do a big crop of chickens out here?
I wouldn't.
Because you don't have like a pen or anything to
No,
put them in.
when we did it before, we did have a chicken tractor that we drug through the we actually had a vineyard out here, and we drug it through the vineyard.
Oh, okay.
And so for 8 weeks, every day, twice a day,
you
we
had to
move that. And it's a lot of work. And
as we get older.
Yeah. Like I said, it's only 8 weeks, but it's
then too, that's
intensive.
during the time that you've been calving in the summer too, haven't you?
Calving?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, this summer we had calves born throughout the summer. Usually I kind of taper that off or whatever, but I will have calves again this summer because we got the bull in here late. The bull is breeding now, and so we're looking at August babies. So I'm not sure, but it would be nice to have my own chicken again and not
to know
have
what's
to
in it.
Yep. And not that I don't trust the people that I bought chicken from. I do. But sometimes it's kind of nice to say, hey, I raised my own, you know, and you can maybe make a little money off of selling. Because, chickens.
To buy farm raised chickens around here is not cheap.
No, it's the least I've seen is $3 a pound, and the most I've seen is about $5 a pound.
Yeah.
And so it's not a cheap chicken, but I get it. Because I've raised them myself, and I know that they're worth every penny.
Yep.
Just because I know how hard it is to raise them, and I know how much they eat. And then if you were going to raise them on organic feed, you're looking at way more than $5 a pound.
Yeah.
Yep. Unless you can raise your own organic feed. If you have to buy it, you're going to be paying a lot for those chickens. We'll see, but we'll maybe touch on a little bit more about raising meat birds, when it comes more in the spring or whatever, when people are looking.
Topics.
Yeah. We'd like to once again thank picosupply.com for sponsoring our podcast. And you can check us out at twogalshomesteading.com. Also on Facebook under the same name, and on Instagram.
We have a TikTok.
We have a TikTok.
And we have a video on it.
Okay. All right. So we're slowly getting into the TikTok.
Yes. I have a new phone with a better camera.
Okay.
And more storage space.
So yes, we're working on getting some videos up and that type of thing. And so hopefully you can check us out in those places. So until next time.
Put some kefir on it.